I am a person who used to have an unhealthy relationship with alcohol, but I no longer do. Like I've changed my identity completely, and when I had this energetic shift that was caused by raising my vibration, and that's why I teach what happened to me. I knew that I was done. So it was an energetic shift.
Welcome to the Spirits Beside Us podcast. I'm your host, Chris Lippincott. I'm an ex-Wall Street analyst turned international medium, spiritual teacher, and best-selling author. Each week we'll dive into the fascinating and uplifting arena of the non-physical world to help you deepen your understanding and spiritual connection to the unseen realm. We'll also share a behind-the-scenes look with others who've done the same and speak with experts in the field about their experiences. Pull up a seat and let's dive into these perspective-changing conversations. Welcome, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Spirits Beside Us. I'm your host, Chris Lippincott, and I'm so happy that you're with us. And today we've got a wonderful guest. Her name is Beth Schrudder, and she is a spiritual and transformative life coach who's had a wonderful background in many different areas, evolving herself and a lot of different transformative experiences. So I really want to dive into that, going from, spiritual evolution when she was growing up to helping people now in spiritual recovery. So we'll span the whole gamut on that one. So this is gonna be a fun episode. So Mary Beth, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Oh, I'm so happy to have you. This is going to be a thing where we talk from A to Z.
It's going to be a good one.
Things to talk about. Well, you before the show, you were talking to me about that. You had an upbringing that was very spiritual, paranormal, having a lot of different experiences when you were younger. Not a lot of people have those kind of experiences. So what were you undergoing when you were young? I mean, were you seeing spirit? Were you in contact with spirit? What was happening? And what was your childhood like, or like your parents?
Right. So it was kind of like you know how if it's just your normal, you don't even realize that not everybody is experiencing the same thing.
Sure.
A lot of the stuff that I had growing up I'm a very highly sensitive child, and I was just like, and I'm still highly sensitive, but I've learned over the years how to protect my energy. And I didn't know anything about being an empath. That's something I didn't learn till my 30s, and would have been real helpful to realize that, oh, all of these energies and feelings aren't my own. I'm picking up on so many other things that I'm just like generalized anxiety my entire life because I didn't know
What
that.
that means. That's what I'm feeling.
Okay. Yeah. And I always had a lot of dreams that came true, which I just thought happened to everybody. So a lot of these predictive dreams, and unfortunately, a lot of them were warning dreams. I'm still working on let's have more of the happy dreams that come true, but that's not how it works for me. I usually get and they're very different dreams from my regular dreams. They're vivid, and it's like, I remember them forever. Like it's crazy vivid. And those are the ones that I know, okay, this is going to come true. And so I have a lot of those, and I thought everybody did.
Those actually sound, those vivid dreams you're having also sound identical to dream visitations when spirit comes to us and describes something to us. And that's really one of the ways where people can tell that it's not just their subconscious mind trying to deal with whatever's going on in their life, because those are the ones we can't really remember. They kind of go off.
Yeah.
We don't really understand them. But when we've got a spiritual visitation in our dreams, it's so crystal clear, so vivid, and we can remember them for years on end.
It's more real than reality.
Yes,
yeah, you're
totally.
and like our regular dreams, they just, no matter how hard I try, they just go away. I forget them. That's the ones where it's like you said, your subconscious is just working, processing emotions and all that.
And that's how you know the difference.
Yes, exactly. So that was happening since I was a kid, and I would always just kind of know what people were thinking and feeling with just like claircognizance was my biggest one, just knowing things. I wouldn't know how I knew things. Like as a kid, I'm knowing like what these grown-ups are thinking. And
Sometimes you probably wouldn't want to know that.
yeah, it was uncomfortable. Like I was really in tune with my dad, which wasn't exactly a good thing because
Yeah. It's like, oh, Dad,
yeah.
I don't want to know that.
Well, no, it wasn't like that, but he had a trauma. Like his dad was an alcoholic who
Huh?
actually died before he died before I was born. He died when my mom was pregnant with me of cirrhosis of the liver. And apparently I found out later through a psychic medium that, because my dad never shared this with me, that my dad was extremely abused, and I needed to be like more forgiving and compassionate of him because
Huh.
his dad was extremely abusive to him and the whole family. But
Yeah.
you know, that's why my dad was so emotionally unavailable and all the things. And I asked it took me a while to ask him, but I finally got the guts and I was like, Dad, you know, and I didn't know anything about my grandpa. And he said, oh my God, that's exactly true. Like 100%, every detail I gave
Wow.
him was true. And he's like, I
Great.
want to talk to the psychic. And he wanted to talk to her. The craziest thing happened. So she had cancer, but she ended up dying before their appointment. He never got to talk to her. He wanted to
Oh,
have that. And we haven't
wow.
really found anybody, you know, I know so many psychics, but that really connected the way she did with
Yeah.
my grandpa. But like literally my, we were finished with the session, and the lady with cancer who was telling me about my grandfather for the first time, and I walked away. I'm at a psychic expo, and she comes chasing me down the aisles, like, come back, come back. She's like, your grandfather is choking me until I come. She's like, he was saying, because I already paid her. He's saying, you aren't done. You need to give her this information. And so he would not let her not tell me these things, like
Wow,
just
that's
because the
amazing.
15 minutes was all I paid for was up. And so she said I gave her more money because she, you know,
Yeah.
but
Right.
anyway, that wasn't what she was expecting. You know, she just is like, your grandfather will not let me let you leave.
Well,
And
that's
it was
it's so
important information to know. Like, I didn't know that about
yeah.
my dad, and it made so much sense about the way he was. I mean, my parents divorced when I was 5, and he kind of was pretty absent most of my life. But I think for him, that's doing a good job compared to the way he was treated by his
Yeah.
father.
Sure. I mean, that story about your grandfather and cirrhosis of the liver sounds eerily familiar to my father, who died of cirrhosis of the liver. So,
Oh,
you
wow.
know, so our connection's actually getting much closer, eerily closer than I'm realizing here, because your grandfather died of cirrhosis of the liver. My father died of cirrhosis of the liver.
Mm,
My mother was an alcoholic, so you know, and she was a raging alcoholic, and my
mm,
father was the social alcoholic, um, but he had destroyed his liver, so he died when I was 18. My mother, you know, died when I was, you know, in my 30s, so you know, they checked out way early. But there was huge alcoholism in my family,
yeah.
and you know, you could with my father, you couldn't really see the change, but with my mother, wow, could you see the change? So I don't know if you had experienced that as well, or maybe, you know, you've had experiences, you know, yourself.
Well, I didn't know that my dad was probably like, he doesn't drink a lot anymore, but when I
Yeah.
think back in retrospect, I'm like, "Oh, we always had to go to a restaurant where they had alcohol," and he would drink,
Of
like,
course.
when I did see him, like, which would be, you know, 1 or 2 times a month after the divorce, and then we moved away from him, so then I didn't see him at all, but every time I did, he was drinking. So I didn't think anything of it as a kid, but in
Sure.
retrospect, you know, I'm like, "Oh, he was a drinker
Nah.
too," and, um yeah, I think that it's not only genetic, but it's also the personalities, you know, and that we the coping mechanisms and
Coping
stuff of
mechanism.
our
Yeah.
parents. Like we can either we have a choice, you know, like, are we going to take them on, or are we going to try to do something different? And you know, I think a lot of it was c- personality with me
Yeah.
too. Like, it's just like I wasn't taught like how to cope with feelings. I wasn't taught
Yeah.
any of this stuff, and I just had all this anxiety from all these energies I'm feeling, and I didn't know how to protect myself. And you know, like, and this is a interesting thing because it's self-soothing too. Like, you know, I think it started because of the divorce, and then they also took away, I was only 5 when and then the same time they take away, I had a blankie. And
Oh no.
this doesn't sound like a trauma, but it is. It's a trauma when you're a kid.
For a
This was
child,
my
yes.
self-soother, but they decided, this was the 70s, right? So apparently you're having a blankie at 5 years old. It was just not good. Like they probably read some book, and like,
Oh
oh
my
well,
God.
we got to take away that
That's
and teach her to
torture.
be. It was like I remember it so well because I woke up and it was just gone, and they're like, oh, we threw it out because you're too old. And I was like, oh my god. And then they got divorced like right after. So they took away my self soothing mechanism, and I just remember like feeling just so much more anxious there.
Oh my
And the
God.
first time I drank alcohol, it sounds crazy, but I was only 11. But I know. I didn't become a regular drinker at 11. I didn't become a regular drinker till 14. But
Oh, all right.
so it wasn't
That's
it
better.
way better than 11 though. And
Only 14. Not
yeah,
a problem.
but I was on vacation with a friend and her parents were like lenient and like way compared to my mom, or at
Liquor
least
cabinets open. Come on in, kids.
it was we're at a condo in Florida and they had all this liquor just sitting out on the countertops, like just
Oh God.
begging us, to drink some. And we just kind of made some concoctions. I don't know. We mixed a bunch of stuff. And the point of the story is for the first time in my life, I didn't feel anxiety. So I was like, oh my God, this is the answer. Like I've never felt
This is my
anxiety
new
free.
blankie.
Yes.
It's my new blankie.
Yes. I was like, this is the answer, which is a huge red flag. Like this
Oh
chick's
yeah.
gonna have a unhealthy relationship with alcohol. So yeah, so I just was like, wow, I just never had felt so uninhibited. And I had a lot of social anxiety too, which is a huge reason why people drink is social lubricant, right?
Yes,
So you're
absolutely.
you're sensitive, you have anxiety just from being sensitive, then you're like I think like my parents weren't great at making me feel, and I feel bad saying this. My mom's no longer alive. My dad might watch it, but they just weren't great at making me feel like I could just be myself. Like, it just
Yeah,
wasn't taught to me. Like these
sure.
days, of course I can, and that's why I don't drink anymore. But I had to learn this. It's a journey, and if your parents don't teach you, you got to figure it out later in life as an adult.
Sure, sure.
So yeah, I think a lot of it started back then with just being this highly intuitive person, social anxiety, and then also, as you know, it's just so normalized in society,
Yeah.
and it's hard to tell when you have a problem when everybody's doing it. And guess what, now I'm the oddball, now I'm the one who's not doing it. And to answer your question that I didn't answer yet about like there are spiritual consequences of alcohol. Like yes, you said your mom like turns into this different person, like a monster, like when she drank. And I've definitely noticed that like with other people more so than myself, like they would just like arguing with like my ex-husband when he would drink, or someone else, an ex-boyfriend or whatever, they would just get this dark look in their eyes, and it didn't feel like they were there, and it felt like something else was influencing them. And then I've learned since then that alcohol is a low vibrational substance, and we are lowering our vibration to the point where we could become a vibrational match to these entities or energies, that are able to influence us. So we're actually allowing that in.
Yeah.
And when we drink alcohol, there are spiritual consequences of drinking alcohol.
Yeah.
And it's
And
happened
what's
to me before
yeah,
where I
I
was
mean,
drinking and I could tell I was out of my body,
oh
and
yeah.
they influence me. Like they take your body for a joyride.
Totally, because what's happening, and this has come through in so many automatic writings and so many mediumship experiences. The automatic writings of the last 150 years. You go through them all, and they all say the same thing. Multiple times they'll reveal that where uh, humans who had some kind of addiction, whether it's alcohol, drugs, gambling, sex, whatever the addiction is, and they haven't gotten over that problem in the
It's like an
human life.
attachment.
An attachment, exactly.
Hmm.
That's their crux. That's their crutch. They
Oh, you
can't get
froze
over
up a
it.
little.
When they transition into spirit, they still have that that issue, that problem. Um, so they're still seeking that vicarious desire that they used to have in the physical, but now that they're not in the physical, they have to find it some other way. So what do? They go to people who also want that same thing, and they
Hmm.
vicariously feel what they're feeling through the other person, and they connect with the other person, and they're like, oh, this feels great. And so many cases, you'll see people, for example, at a bar, and I think we talked about this before.
Yeah.
People in a bar, if you're a medium, you can see and feel the energy of the person who's vicariously trying to get that connection by influencing the person, saying, "Come on, just one more, just one more. Oh, that feels so good. Oh yeah, let me get that high from you. Let me get that buzz. This feels so fantastic." Whatever it is, I mean, same thing could be drugs, whatever it is. And if something, like, for example, like with my mother, for example, like when I was, a young kid, she would go into, these alcoholic binges, and she'd stay in her room for, weeks at a time or days at a time. Anytime I saw her come out of her room, it was literally like she looked transformed, and I called her like this monster because she
Mhm.
she was so unrecognizable. Not just that
Mhm.
she's got this alcoholic, stupor, but her whole personality, her voice changed. She was a
It wasn't
totally different
her.
person. It wasn't her. And there
Yeah.
was a point where in seventh grade, I literally wrote an essay for my English class. My dad said, "Well, just write what you know." So I did.
Sorry, Mom.
Yeah, my mom got really pissed.
I can imagine. Didn't make
But
her look too good.
no, it didn't, and no, it didn't really go well with her. But it revealed that, hey, and detailed how when she'd come out of her room, like, oh my God, the monster has taken over. So what was this monster? I was perceiving something different. Sure enough, it was, because that was the person in spirit who was trying to live vicariously through her alcoholic experience.
It's exactly what you said. I know psychic mediums too who will go to bars and they see all these entities or energies hovering over people, just waiting for the opportunity. And it's when they're blacked out, that's when they can actually take over. It's not a full possession, but it's an influence that they're able to.
Yeah.
And I was telling you before we started recording, like I remember swooping back into my body after being blacked out. And I was like, what? And people were telling me, yeah, you were just acting different, but you were like walking and talking and I didn't remember anything. But the blackout phase is when they really are able to influence you, and they wait for that.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
it's easy to get, I mean, honestly, like I think a lot of prescriptions that they say don't take with alcohol, people do it anyway, and that causes blackouts.
Oh yeah. I mean, that was perhaps why my mother was getting so slammed, was because she was taking Valium and
Mhm.
alcohol at the same time, because that was her combination of choice.
That is the recipe for a blackout right there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like these benzos that they are prescribed like candy, like
Yeah.
you take the benzos and everybody was like, it says it right on there, don't mix it with alcohol, but everybody does. Like
Right.
and then you just easily black out even with just a couple drinks.
Yeah. Totally. And I can remember going into her room, and she'd be basically blacked out, and there were you know bottles of wine and beer and you name it. Just, it was like this. It
Wow.
it looked like a bar at closing time. And it smelled like a bar at closing time. It was horrible. Oh my
Wow.
God.
Well, I was more of a functional, real highly functional drinker. And hopefully some of your audience can relate to this because we don't have to hit a rock bottom or be
Yeah,
that bad off to change our lives. And we could change our lives at any time. I
sure.
didn't quit drinking till I was 45. I'm 50
Yeah,
now. So, but I so it's been over 5 years alcohol free. And honestly, maybe some of your listeners will relate to this, but I didn't know I had a problem. Like I said, I was comparing myself to other people.
yeah,
It's really hard to tell in this society. And I actually got an addiction recovery certification as a niche. I was already a life coach. I had a good energy. I was helping a lot of people, like, because I help other people with career paths, with fitness, health, nutrition. Like, I was actually very good at all this stuff. It's just that I also drank every most days red wine, but it was my reward. Like
yeah.
at the end of the day, and it started when I worked for corporate, and I didn't like working for corporate. Even though I did love it, once I became a life coach, I still kept the habit because sometimes addictions are just habits that have gone awry,
Right,
right?
right.
And so here I am drinking red wine every night. There was always somebody to meet me for happy hour. And sometimes I would stop at the store on the way home and get a bottle, to have some more when I got home. And I didn't realize till I got this addiction recovery niche how much it affected your sleep, right? Because I started
Mm,
to learn more about alcohol
yep.
and I was also related to it, like, uh-oh, like, I think I might, like, I'm a self-aware enough person to be like, okay, maybe I have a problem. Like, because why do I need to drink every day? Why do we? Like,
Yeah.
why can't I just be present? There's why am and it's also like you're rewarding yourself, but you're lowering your vibration. I'm a law of attraction teacher. Like, I knew too much, like, to do this self-sabotage. Like, it just clicked with me when I was learning more about it. And the guy who wrote this book that I read during my when I was getting that certification, it's called Alcohol Explained by William Porter. And he was doing research on insomnia. Like, why can't I sleep? He was looking this up when he realized he made the connection, connected the dots that it was
Yeah.
alcohol, because alcohol is a depressant,
Hmm.
and our bodies are doing the normal natural thing by creating stimulants to counteract the depressant of alcohol. So after you're about 4 hours after your last drink, that depressant is worn off, but you're left with the stimulants. So I was waking
Ah.
up in the middle of the night, and so was he. And that's what he, with like all the stimulated, because I still had the stimulants that my body created to counteract the, and it doesn't work with moderation as you get older,
Yep.
because let's say I only had one glass, my body still creates the stimulants of my usual. So I'm still going to be just as stimulated because it creates those stimulants during your first drink.
Yeah.
So I'm waking up at 3 a.m. with my heart racing, just and not being able to get back to sleep. And it was
Yes.
because of that alcohol. And once I knew that, I was like, it's got to go, because this is ruining my next day. I was blaming my hormones for everything. Any ladies who are listening, if you're like blaming, well, guess what? Alcohol does sabotage your hormones, by the way. There's nothing that it dysregulates your nervous system, your endocrine system, like so many things that I didn't know, because this knowledge isn't given to us, because alcohol is a huge money maker. We see like
Hmm.
tobacco, we see cigarettes, they got warnings on there, but they don't put it on alcohol. They, maybe
It's a
birth
poison.
effects.
It's
It's
literally a poison.
ethanol is rocket fuel, and we're drinking it every day. And I'm like, well, so I knew certain things. I know, okay, it's not great for my liver, so I'm going to take some milk thistle. There's supplements and stuff. We tell ourselves, but what I learned through this addiction recovery certification and stuff is it's a group 1 carcinogen, right up there with tobacco and asbestos. It's right up there.
Wow.
It's linked to 7 different types of cancer, just that it's linked to. It's probably more than that, right?
Yeah, sure.
And it kind of reminds me of like back in the 1930s to the 50s, where they used to, like, tobacco companies used to pay doctors, like, to push it and
Yes.
and prescribe. They prescribed cigarettes,
And ads would have doctors
and
smoking.
their
Like, this
and
is the
their
best.
thing, their stethoscope, and they had their lab coats. Yeah, they did all that, like, and that wasn't even that long ago, but
No.
it was being prescribed through the 1950s.
Yeah.
Cigarettes were prescribed. So it reminds me of that kind of thing where, we're just hiding the fact, we're hiding this stuff because it's such a money maker, and it's not really being put out there, but it's the biggest scam out there if you think about it.
Oh, yeah.
Like, the how much of the markup is, and then you're poisoning yourself. It's dumbing you down. Like, I know conspiracy theorists who won't drink tap water. I don't drink tap water either, actually. But because of the fluoride and what it
Yeah.
does to your third eye and like all that stuff, and other parts of your body, fluoride's not good for us.
Not to
They
mention
won't.
all the rust and all the other particles that are going through the
Yeah,
pipes.
yeah, definitely purify your water, people. But the thing is they won't drink tap water because of that, but they're drinking alcohol. It's like,
Hmm.
like if you're a conspiracy theorist who drinks alcohol, you're not doing it right, because there's
You're
nothing that
drinking the
dumps you down.
Kool-Aid. You're drinking
Yes.
the Kool-Aid.
Yeah, you're being
Literally.
fooled by the biggest scam out there. It really
Oh yeah,
is.
totally. And I think that's what's so amazing is that, I mean, to your point, what my wife and I were noticing as we kept on getting older, we'd go out with friends. We used to have drinks and wine, but then the older we got, the more we noticed, hey, wait a second, we can't sleep. What the hell's going on? And so, for me and for my wife, we kept on saying, "Oh yeah, well maybe I should just try to cut it down, and maybe we'll get some more sleep." Um, for both me and my wife, it wasn't until we both had major issues that kind of splashed cold water on where the
The
reality.
wake up call. Yeah.
I mean, for me, it was ones where I was, one evening, I think I was going to a men's club, hanging out, and I'm with my buds. I'm at hanging out in this place, and it's like because I'm a member of the club, the booze is free. Everything's free. Just keeps on coming. So I'm like drinking this alcohol like water. And I'm thinking, this is feeling grand.
Mhm.
So I do that to the point where they got to drive me home. I mean, I was barely able to walk. And the next day, there was a client coming into work. And so I'm like, well, my car is at the club, but I still got to go to work. And I am still blotto. I wake
Mhm.
up totally hammered, but I'm like cognizant enough that I got to go to work. So I get an Uber or something and I come into work and I'm like banging into the wall and like walking to my colleagues and I'm kind of going, oh man, I'm still smashed. And they're all looking at me in horror. They're like, get the hell out of here. So they like get this huddle of colleagues and they shoo me away before A, my boss sees me, and B, the client sees me. Then they put me back into an Uber and they send me home. And then there was another one where I literally got so angry at my son that out of this alcoholic rage, I took my anger out on him, which I had never done before.
I hate that the blame, I mean the shame and the guilt that comes after doing something like that sucks so bad. Like that's
Yeah,
something that I don't miss is all that shame and guilt, like just from even just broken promises that I kept to myself. Like I'm only going to have two glasses, and then
right.
I don't. But yeah, that's I know that feeling. Like I went off on my son once and it still to this day stings.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it was an emotional destruction for my son. He had to go, seek help for it. It was mostly
Oh.
destroying for me. So I had to go, oh my God. And at that point, I was kind of called in, just like to answer for everything I had done. And then so that was my wake up call for my wife. God bless her. She found, hey, wow, I got this issue. I got to go seek help, and she did, and now she's like clean, and she's like 100%
And
been that way.
alcohol's addictive to everybody. Like to everyone listening to
Yeah,
this, like it's not like it's an addictive substance in general. And I mean, in
and we don't
2008,
think about that. We don't really
yeah,
realize that. We just think, oh, it's
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 too socially accepted. Like
yes,
it's actually the I always say it's the one drug that we have to justify why we don't do it. Like instead of why we do it, we have
yeah.
to say, like people are like,
There's a
why aren't you
reason.
drinking? Why aren't you
Yeah,
drinking? Like
totally.
that's weird. And
There was a reason why prohibition came through, but it's like apparently I guess the way it went, way it was done was
yeah,
not exactly it didn't really work because people just got around it anyway.
back in 2008, I got a DUI for drinking and driving, and that wasn't even a catalyst for me to stop because I started telling all my friends like, "Oh my gosh, this horrible thing happened to me." And they're like, "Oh yeah, I've had one. I had one. I had one." Like everyone
Everybody
I
gets one.
knew. And so then I was like, "Oh, okay. It's just something that you do." And then like I just blamed it on.
It's
So
almost
I
like a
did
badge.
yeah. Oh, now I got one too. Yay. And I remember I went on this 3-day getaway. Like I did get arrested, so I mean I was crying that night. Trust me, I was freaking out. But they're like, "Oh, you blew in the breathalyzer? You shouldn't have blown," which I didn't know anything. I'm like, "What?" They're like, "Oh yeah, you just drinking one beer. If you blow in a breathalyzer, you're gonna get arrested." And I was like, "Oh." So then that minimized it too. Like, okay. But yeah, I just that did not even affect it did affect me until started talking to everybody and it turned out to be such a normal thing and I couldn't really
Yeah,
find anybody who didn't have a situation like that. I mean, or maybe, we find other people who, to hang around with though too. Like and it's even a vibrational thing. We're hanging around people who have our habits
yeah,
and so
exactly.
it was easy for me to justify, I guess, right?
Yeah, and to your point, the vibrational thing and the law of attraction, not only are we lowering our vibration, but we're attracting others into our vibration. So it's almost like
Yes.
a circular loop where not only we keep doing it, but we keep inviting others to want to do it. So that influences us. Not only that, but you also got, the people in spirit who are seeking, that vicarious hit, they want it as well.
Yeah. It's a
So
vicious
it's
cycle, isn't it?
yeah. So it's like, you've got to, be aware that there are other energies, whether they're, other humans, right with you in your social circle who are going to support you in your drinking, or you've got people who are not in the physical form who also want to support your drinking because they're going to get their hit from you. So you got to, close down and shut out that negative vibration that you're going to attract.
Yeah,
Think about what you want to attract.
exactly. And a lot of my coaching is all about raising your vibration, because a lot of like what I notice is the more I raise my vibration and it got higher and higher when I quit drinking, the temptation's gone.
Yeah.
Because you don't, and spiritual recovery is what I teach, because I really feel like when we don't have that energetic spiritual shift, where it goes so much deeper than just like like for AA. Like I don't go, I never went to AA. That wasn't going to work for me. For me personally, I think everybody should keep whatever tools works for them, do that. But for me and a lot of people I know, AA was depressing,
Mm.
and it goes against my spiritual beliefs. Like I can't say I am an alcoholic, because when we say I am, that's powerful creative words, and
Creative,
you're
yeah.
creating that in your life. And they say it every time they go to a meeting, I am an alcoholic, I am an alcoholic. Well, no, I don't say that. I am a person who used to have an unhealthy relationship with alcohol, but I no longer do. Like I've changed my identity
Right.
completely, and when I had this energetic shift that was caused by raising my vibration, and that's why I teach what happened to me. I knew that 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 I was done. So it was an energetic shift. I'm no longer that old identity. I don't tell that old story anymore. I mean, I help other people, but I'm not in that story myself, going to these group meetings, keeping myself in that old vibration. I don't do that. It's just no longer who I am.
Yeah.
So it's just really important to get yourself to that. For me, like there's no other way to do it, because I was white knuckling it before that. Before I had that energetic shift, it's like I really still had these cravings, and I really still wanted to drink, and I really still wanted to go out with my friends and do this stuff, and but I was stopping myself, but the cravings were still there, so that made it really hard, and it felt so restrictive. And I don't feel that way anymore, because the spiritual recovery makes you free from all that.
Yeah, and to your point, I mean, it's an excellent point where you're talking about you're in this creative mode, because there's this one saying that I absolutely love and hold dear that I encourage everybody to memorize. It's from Buddha, and it says, "All that you are is a result of what you have thought."
Yes.
Because it's your thought creation. You create your reality, your existence, just by the power of your thought. And so many times spirits come through both in, mediumship readings or in automatic writings, and they always say, we create here with the power of thought, because that's the most powerful energy in existence. You on the physical also have the power of thought. You can do anything with the power of thought,
Hmm.
but we don't realize just how powerful our thoughts are, and what we can literally create just with the power of thought.
And our feelings. So we got to make
Yeah.
sure our feelings are in alignment, because that's why I love
Yeah.
teaching law of attraction. You're right. This is right up my alley, because it's like for so long there, well, and there's so many misconceptions, right? And did you watch The Secret back in like
Oh
2006 or whatever?
yes,
Yeah.
yeah, I love
Yeah,
that.
I love it. But it was basic, right? Like it was a great introductory video. Like when I was a kid, I always knew, like I was talking to my friends, like being a kid, like, did you notice that when you think this way and feel this way, that this happens? And when you think this way, feel this, like I could tell I'm either repelling or attracting. I could tell
Yeah.
that. So when I saw that movie in 2006, a friend had a party and put it on, and we, like a big group of ladies, we watched it. And I was like, this is what I've been trying to talk about. Like, okay, there's a name for it. And it turns out it's ancient esoteric wisdom that's just been hidden from us, right?
Right.
So truthfully, like what I couldn't figure out, like that movie made me think for some time, like I could just think, positive thoughts, and things would flow to me. I could sit on a meditation cushion and quiet my mind. But it's really there is no law of attraction without having our feelings in alignment with those thoughts, and our actions, our behaviors as well. It's a package deal.
It's a power.
It's
That's what gives it power.
right. I say that this is my own little saying that I made up, is you can't the universe. Like you can't just say positive affirmations and expect things to flow to you.
Yes.
You got to really believe it. Your heart has to be in alignment with your mind,
It's the
and
desire.
it's those feel. And once you get your heart and your mind lined up, your heart is magnetic, and our minds are electric. We're electromagnetic beings. We're always attracting. We can't turn this off, guys. Like
Right.
I have tons of manifestation stories and synchronicities, and sometimes they go the other direction. Like sometimes they're, because we're always manifesting, for better or for worse. And like I have a funny manifestation story
Please.
where okay, so I was I had this weird day. It was like the whole day we're in like 5D, like all this crazy stuff was happening. Everything I said it was just happening. And we're sitting at this red light. My friend and I, we just had gone out to eat, and we're sitting at this red light on the way home. I'm driving, and I said to her, I was like, I really wish, this was like 15 years ago, and I was at this corporate job where they were keeping me under hours where I didn't have health insurance. They kept me just under full
Just
time,
yeah,
right? You know how they do that?
yeah.
And so I was like, I really wish I could see a chiropractor, like my back and I'm my neck. And I'm like, something's, and right when I said that, slam, we get hit by a drunk driver
Oh
at a red light.
no.
I'm just sitting, and so listen, this was the path of least resistance to my chiropractor. So you see how the universe can
No.
orchestrate things in a way, but I really wasn't
Not the
hurt.
way you wanted it, but you got
Well,
what you wanted.
but I really wasn't hurt. I get a chiropractor free for a year, free medical massage for a year. We
Wow.
both got cash money because she was drunk, and the insurance company called us to negotiate things, right? And I'm like, so like, and then my car was fixed. I mean, it was just it wasn't really that bad, and
Yeah.
I got everything I wanted. I'm like, well, so that's interesting. So it can come to you in so many different ways,
In
you
the
know.
ways that you least expect it. That's the other part. And you can't, because when
It's
we try to
coordinated.
manifest, we have to let that go to the universe, because when we try to control how it's going to come about, then we suddenly take away that control from the universe. We got to uh, think it, desire it, and then let it go. We can't say, here's exactly how it's going to happen, because there are unlimited ways it could come about.
Yeah, and the universe has much better ways than our little human brains can
Oh,
concoct, right?
yeah.
So it's like I'm like, and that turned out being a blessing. But it's just, it's how you look at it. And a lot of people think, oh, you can high vibe your way out of bad things happening, and that's not true. That's just
No.
not true. Like, and when I hear people say that, or positive vibes only kind of thing, first of all, we we live in 3D physical time space reality. Bad things are going to happen. Our parents are going to die. Our pets are going to die. We're going to lose a job. Just It's just part of being on Earth school, right?
Yeah.
Stuff's going to go down.
Right.
But what does change when you learn about deliberate creation of your life and law of attraction principles is your relationship with the contrast changes. So like when that happened with me with the wreck, I was like, oh, this is awesome. And some people might have been really mad and like, I can't believe this happened to me, and I got to take my car to the shop. And I was like, this worked out perfectly, right? For it's a great synchronicity, right? it's
Yep.
it's how it's our relationship with the contrast that changes. And you know um addicts tend to have, I do have an addictive brain. I have an addictive personality. I do believe it stemmed from the childhood and all my childhood trauma and sensitivities that I
And
had.
you're blanky.
My blankie. So like I had this whole like pattern of toxic relationships too. Addiction to like food addiction, things like this, where we're trying to comfort ourselves, we're trying to push down our feelings. I never was taught how to process feelings, and that's why I don't like the positive vibes only thing, even though I teach law of attraction. Pay attention to your feelings, because those are
Yeah.
guideposts. That's how, like, there's a reason you're feeling that. Emotions are manifestations in and of themselves. So don't deny them, don't push them down, don't be plastic happy, right? Because those feelings are still there, and they're going to come out when you're drunk, when
Well,
you're
yeah.
in a fight, when something triggers you on social media. Those feelings that you're ignoring are still in there. They live in your body until you process them. And a lot of times when you have a racing mind at night, it's because you didn't spend that time during the day to have some quiet time or process feelings, or just deal with your emotions. So then
Yeah.
you go to lay your head down on the pillow, and you got all these racing thoughts, and sometimes they come out in your dreams, like we talked about
Yeah.
earlier.
Right.
But it's
Totally.
just much better just to do it during the day. And
Yep.
remember, you're not your feelings, you're not your thoughts, you're
No.
just don't give them that type of power. Like sometimes I'm just like, oh, isn't that interesting? Like,
Yeah.
okay.
Well, that's why I'm always telling people that they've got to meditate every single day, even if it's only for 5 minutes,
Or if it's
10
just
minutes.
walking, like you can
Yeah.
do
Or
walking, do something that
you can
works
do
for
a
you.
walking meditation too.
Yeah.
It's the same concept. It's like either getting outside and grounding yourself, or just walking and allowing yourself to just be in
Away
your
from
own state.
distractions.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's what meditation does. It allows yourself to be away from the chatter of the mind, the chatter of the day. So even if it's 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever it is, just allow yourself to chill out, listen to great background ambient music
Mhm.
soundtrack that resonates with you. And if that's what, gets you to calm that monkey mind that's chattering 100% of the time, do that. Or go gardening. A lot of people just totally chill out and meditate when they're gardening. It's very therapeutic. Go walking, do something, and that allows you to process all this stuff and just kind of, oh,
And your
just
listeners
take
might be
me away.
more willing to do this, might be more motivated when you realize, like, when you're growing your spiritual gifts. If you're
Yeah,
listening to Chris's show, you probably are into this stuff, and you can tap everybody's psychic, but you have so many distractions that you're not tuned in. So
yeah,
get rid of the distractions. Like, I always get things in the shower. Like, I always get
yeah.
hits, like, and it's because why? We're unplugged. Like, there's nothing, and so we finally are
and,
able
and we're
to,
and we're
like,
getting soothed by the water.
I do think water is a conductor, right? Like,
Totally.
and so, like, there a lot of downloads come to me in the shower, and I think that's
Yeah.
it. Those two things, the water, and then also just we're in receiving mode because we finally are unplugged and we don't have
Hmm.
distractions, right?
Yeah.
And like we talked about addiction earlier, it's not only alcohol and drugs, like you said, like work can be an addiction for a lot of us, and scrolling on
Yeah.
our phones. Oh my God. Like,
Oh.
I have to catch myself. A lot of this spiritual recovery is just self-awareness, like being aware. Like,
Yeah.
can you have
Right.
something, like for me with my food and sugar addiction, I just had to learn, like, I can't just have one cookie. That's not how my brain works. Some people have a dial and they can moderate and be like, oh,
Hmm.
like I think there's a 25% is the number that I heard, the most recent number I heard, where 25% of people can have like one delicious cookie and just stop and be like, I'm good, I'm content. But
Wow.
75% of us are like, I want another one. Right.
Hmm.
And so, like, that's okay. That's human nature. But then the addicts are a smaller, it's not 75% of us are addicts, but I'm just saying, like, it's just human nature to, when something's good, we want
We
more.
want more.
And so you got
Exactly.
to be self-aware and figure out like what's going to work for you. Nobody's going to quit anything until they're damn good and ready. Number
Right.
one. So like when I take on a client, they need to already know, like, they need to be committed. Like, I already know this whatever it is sometimes it's just overthinking is a addiction. Overthinking and having those negative thought loops, like the monkey mind, that's addiction, because as we know, one thought leads to another, and they
Hmm.
connect,
Go right
energetically
down that.
connect.
Go right down the
Yeah,
spiral.
I mean, and then there's shopping, like, because what are we doing? We're filling a void, and people like downplay stuff like that, but that destroys families when you're spending money that you don't really have to fill a void. And all of this stuff, all addictions are, don't beat yourself up. We just know, like, innately we're supposed to feel good, and we're
Yeah.
looking for a way to feel good and self-soothe.
Our brains are wired to naturally desire to feel good, whether it's through endorphins or dopamine or something, or because it's over the how many hundreds of thousands of years we've been around. That's how we've learned to adapt. That's how we've, our our mammalian brain, even it's the same concept. We need to have
Yeah.
feelings that are good, because if we were doing something bad, that would be actually harming ourselves. So we're trained to go for something that feels good because that's healthy in a way. It keeps us away from harm. How about well, I don't know. You got the point.
But the addictive brain is different. Like, we
Yes.
don't handle dopamine the same way. And I want to put this a positive spin on this because this helped me. We actually, our pleasure centers, we feel more pleasure. If you have an addictive brain, you actually, in everything you do, feel more pleasure than the normal brain, the typical brain, we'll call it. So I have a story about on my once I realized I shouldn't be drinking anymore, but I still hadn't let it go completely. Um, a friend of mine saw this documentary called One Little Pill, and it's about this pill called naltrexone. Have you heard of it?
No.
Naltrexone, naltrexone. So it's prescribed in the United States for like food addiction a lot, but this documentary was about prescribing it for alcohol addiction. And it's called One Little Pill because you take this pill an hour before you imbibe, an hour before your first drink. And it's an opiate blocker, an opioid blocker. It blocks the pleasure
Oh,
centers of your brain. So
wow.
you don't get that extreme rush of pleasure that an addict's brain usually gets. It turns your brain into a typical brain instead of an addict brain. So we're like, okay. And so basically what's been happening and what that documentary is about is it shows people, like, they take it, they have their drink, you still feel drunk, but you don't get that same dopamine hit. The pleasure is not as
Wow.
intense, so it turns you into a normal drinker, and you just don't give a shit about that second glass. You just
Yeah.
don't like,
Yeah.
and I did it and I was like, wow, this is so weird. But it was a turning point from that. Wasn't when I quit drinking, but it definitely was a turning point because I was like, alcohol is not the thing. Alcohol doesn't have a lot of power over me. It's my brain that's amazing. My
Yeah.
brain is making alcohol badass because if I could take this one pill and suddenly alcohol's not, like who cares about it now? I didn't even want that second class.
Yep. Yep.
It's not the alcohol and that's another thing people say in AA that I don't like. Oh, I have no power over alcohol.
Of
I am
course you
I
don't.
am my coaching's opposite teaching. I empower people. Like we have
Yeah.
power over everything. But the trick is that once you do get all this power and you do feel like this higher vibe and you have the spiritual transformation, you don't desire the alcohol anymore.
Yeah, one thing that really turned me for the corner is it suddenly dawned on me. I'm like, wait a second. What I really love about the two things I love about having the wine at at dinner with friends was number one, the wine just tasted absolutely phenomenal. So maybe
I
there was a
loved red wine. Yeah.
sugar content was great, but I just love the the terroir, the different types of wine. I was really getting into it. It's like that. Okay, so I was going with that aspect, and then of course you've got the wine in your hand. You're in a social environment with your friends, so that felt good. But then it dawned on me. I'm like, wait a second. Okay, so those are the two. Those are the two of the three components. The third component was the alcoholic component that was making me feel really good. And I'm thinking, I was like, well, can I have the other two without the necessity of having alcohol there? And then I started saying, well, let's play with that concept. So I started, taking non-alcoholic wine to dinner with friends. I'm still getting the flavor and the terroir and all that good
You
stuff.
still have the ritual going on.
Yeah, still got the ritual with my friends and the thing that I have to have that glass in my hand, so I'm feeling comfort, and social, the whole deal. But I'm not getting the alcohol, and I'm like, holy smokes, this works. I'm getting all the good stuff that I still love, none of the bad effects that I was having. And it was at that point that my wife and I realized, holy cow, we struck gold. Just drink non-alcoholic wine, and it's all over the market. It's a huge market now.
There's a huge sober movement going on. Yeah. And so
Yeah.
yeah, anyone who's sober curious, this is the time to give it a try. And it's overwhelming to think like, oh, I'm never going to drink again. Like right before you have that spiritual transformation or
Yeah.
before you have that energetic shift. But just give it 30 days and see how you feel. Like,
Try
because
it out.
and if it's scary for you to go 30 days without drinking, then you really need to hopefully we planted a seed for you that maybe you have an unhealthy relationship with alcohol. If 30 days of being alcohol free, call it a cleanse. But yeah, if that's overwhelming for you to go 30 days, there's probably something you need to look at within yourself, like why can't I just be present for 30 days?
Yeah, and try and try out the difference between alcohol free versus alcohol. Why do you have to have the wine that has the alcohol?
I do
What's the point?
sparkling water just because
Yeah,
I to avoid sugar. Because some of the like I love the idea of the non-alcoholic drinks, but a lot of them have like other things in them that I can't
yeah,
do because since I'm a sugar addict, like what I've learned is when I don't eat sugar, I don't crave sugar. Just like, well, I don't crave cocaine because I don't do cocaine, right? We
right.
crave what we do, what we eat,
Yeah,
what we ingest.
right,
So
right.
I'm just so much better off being sugar free. I don't crave it anymore.
Of all
And then
kinds, yeah,
I don't feel restricted because I don't have the cravings. You know what I
right.
mean?
But even wine, that was the other thing that my wife was coming up with. Me and my we were both saying, oh well, guess what? Wine has sugar, and we can't have sugar. That's going to totally stimulate us. But even non-alcoholic wine had the sugar.
Yeah.
So we're like, okay, which devil do we want to deal with? We're like, all right,
No,
let's just
you pick the best devil. But yeah,
yeah,
that's why I just do sparkling water though, just because
yeah.
there's no
Yeah,
devil.
it's
Devil free.
yeah, yeah, there you go. It's whichever one you want. So you in your case you threw away all the pitchforks. For me, I just kind of like dumbed down my pitchfork. Um, but it's like
Well, because you like that you're doing it for the taste too. And that
yeah,
taste, you don't have the sugar like addiction that I have, right? So like not everybody needs to find their own things. Like when I
yeah,
first quit drinking, so you do want to replace your habits with a healthy habit, right? So like when I quit drinking, I started going to the gym and instead of happy hour, right? You
yeah,
want to
right.
replace it. Like if it's AA, go to AA. Like that's the great thing about AA is you have somewhere to go in place, because you're going to have a lot more time in your day when you don't
And a
drink.
social circle too.
Yeah, and you have, like, did you notice that with, like, when you suddenly have so much more time when you don't drink, because you don't realize how much time, like, when you drink, and how much time you could blow off from drinking, like, and just kind of sitting around, and you've like, and I definitely loved the feeling of being buzzed. I definitely enjoyed it, and so that it just got to that point where it was no longer worth the trade-off, and that's a personal decision for everybody. Is like, hey, that risk reward thing became, like, it's and I didn't trust myself, even though I could moderate a lot of the time. I didn't trust myself to do it perfectly every time. I told you that saying. Saint Augustine said, "Abstinence is easier than perfect moderation,"
Right.
and that's definitely true for me, because I'm like an all-in person. Like, I'm an extremist. I'm all in or all out, and I definitely do better with abstinence. But maybe some people listening, maybe you can, like, now that you're just simply aware, like, hey, maybe I am overdoing it with alcohol and it's affecting my sleep. Maybe you can just tone it down. Maybe you have a dial instead of a switch, like me.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not saying everybody needs to quit drinking, but it's something we need to ask ourselves, and just
Yeah.
be
Be
really
aware of.
honest with ourselves, because that's something I lied to myself for so many years, and people were telling me I drink too much, and I'm just like, whatever, I'm fun and you're lame and you're controlling me, stop trying to control me. I had this attitude, like, don't, because we get defensive when we're not ready to quit something.
Yeah.
We feel attacked,
Yep,
honestly.
exactly. That was what was going on, with both me and my wife. We were feeling attacked that we're like, oh, wait a second. We don't have a problem. It's you that has the problem.
Right, right.
And so it's just
Sorry
kind
you're
of
so
like,
boring.
yeah, right. I was like, come on, I'm a regular laugh riot. I mean, what are you talking about?
Ooh, and that's like something that I definitely. So I lost some friends. That does
Yeah,
happen, you guys. Like, if you have friendships that are based solely on partying, they're gonna go away. But I kept a lot of friends too, and the
yeah,
good ones, the ones that are true friendships. And and when I go out, like, I definitely can tell you that there's a warm up period, a 10-15 minutes where I'm like, ooh, this is tough to be around everybody drinking, and I'm having sparkling water, but it only takes about 10 or 15 minutes, and then I start to, I warm up, and they're, because I still have some, a little bit of social anxiety.
oh yeah, totally,
It's still
totally,
there, but it
yeah.
takes, we work on that, and it gets better and better and better, and they act, different, because they're drinking, and the same people who I thought were so hilarious all the time, and they're slurring their words, repeating themselves, saying the same jokes over and over. It's like, oh, well, alcohol dumbs down our brain. So we
Yeah.
think we can have fun
Ooh,
doing anything. Like, you're going to really find that there's things that we thought we labeled as fun, really aren't that fun when you're sober. And what you do is you find different things to do. Like,
yeah,
I'll still go to a bar with friends now and then, but it's not my go-to thing. Like, I'll
yeah,
do it like if it's somebody's birthday, but like, I found so many more things that are more fun, where I can be present and feel amazing and remember everything. How about
right.
that?
Hello, that's a big one. Not feel like you got the pain the next day or
Yeah,
the
and one of the catalyst that when I really quit drinking is something that you learn is if you wake up with a hangover or anxiety, and sometimes I would drink enough that I was shaking, because it does affect your nervous system. And I went to the I would go sometimes, and I didn't keep wine at my house because I didn't trust myself. So I would go to the store in the morning. I went to the grocery store this one morning, and I bought a bottle of wine at like 7 a.m. As soon as I'm like waiting for them to open, because I was like all shaky and nervous. It was like horrible. Like, and I'm like, what am I doing? And I'm like so embarrassed and so ashamed. I'm buying a bottle of wine at 7 a.m. But I knew the hair of the dog works. Like, I knew that already. Like, because I'd had enough, breakfast with girls to be like, oh, I feel better after having a Bloody Mary, or whatever, or mimosa. And so I'm there getting a bottle of wine at 7 a.m. Like on a Wednesday. It was something ridiculous. And I bought a gift bag to go with the bottle of wine, because I wanted to make it look like, oh, I'm just going to a party later, and I'm getting this,
oh,
but it's so humiliating and so embarrassing. And that was like a big catalyst for me. I think
mm,
it's okay. Like, for the most part, I'm like, don't dwell in, and I don't think we should dwell in
no,
shame and guilt. But sometimes we're meant to feel those feelings, like I said, so that, because it gives us a conscience. Like, I was like, oh my
yeah,
God, like,
right.
but then I didn't dwell on it, like, it's just like that was enough, like, to give me a wake up call, like you
And
said earlier.
that was the catalyst,
A
and I think that
catalyst, like, I
yeah,
needed to feel that shame,
yeah,
because I'm like, what am I doing?
right,
Like, this is so ridiculous. And it was because I'd been up all night with anxiety
wow,
because of the stimulants. And that was
yeah.
why I was shaking.
And what's so interesting, and touched on it just a second ago, was the social component. I can remember being in college, and you'd be at a party, and if you didn't have one of those red Dixie cups in your hand and you're pounding the beer, you were an outcast, and that mentality lasted with me for decades. So
Hmm.
every social situation, I had to have something in my hand. I had to be seen drinking something in my hand, or I became the social outcast. And it was that object in the hand that was like, okay, look, guys, I'm part of the tribe. I'm cool, right? And that just lasted up until recently. And it wasn't until I started getting the concept of, wow, it's the object. Maybe I can replace what's in the object. I'll still
Hmm.
hold on to the glass, and I'll still make it look like I'm holding some kind of wine. So I'll either have ginger ale, which
Yeah.
looks like wine, or sparkling water, or that looks
You
like
put
wine.
sparkling water in a glass that like it looks like vodka. Stick a lime on your glass.
Yes.
Nobody knows. Nobody
Or
knows
have a
unless you.
or have
And then
a
they're drunk enough that they don't
they
even
don't have a
care what you're
clue.
doing.
They
Yeah.
don't even care. And the funny thing is, and I started to learn this too, is that you'd be surprised, if not upset, about how few people really give a damn about you anyway, because
There's
everybody is self-centered.
They're focused on themselves. Yeah. We'd
Yeah.
be we'd be sad to realize how little people think of us.
So, I mean, think of yourself. When you go into a social situation, you're not focused on, oh, that person's uncool because of XYZ. You're thinking, oh my God, I've got to do this. We're me, because we're more focused on how can I improve
Yeah.
myself. That's the way all humans are um, designed. That's how we
Hmm.
work. So put yourself in their shoes. They're thinking about themselves, not you. So go walking around with that glass of something else. Maybe it's even a virgin mocktail of some kind. I mean, I've gotten into mocktails now where I'm doing all these great mocktails that taste way better than the real thing. And I'm like, this is fantastic. I'm getting a
Yeah.
mocktail and nobody even knows or cares.
Yeah. And I'm so fortunate that my son doesn't care about he doesn't care about alcohol at all. And he's 21 now. And
That's
like
great.
I was always telling him the truth. And I think that's something thumbs up for the parenting thing. Like, even though he saw me drink, the next day when I felt hungover, I would say, Spencer, listen, I know I was having fun last night, but if this is how I feel today. I was always very real with
Yeah.
him about it.
Right.
And, he drank with his dad on his 21st birthday, my ex-husband. They were in Florida. He was visiting his dad in Florida, and they were doing shots at like 1 p.m. And I was so pissed off about it. I was so pissed. I'm like, why can't you just be a regular dad and just like be like, hey son, let's have a beer? No, let's do tequila shots at 1 p.m. But anyway, it turned out to be a great thing because he didn't feel good, and he was like, I don't think I'm going to be a drinker. So
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, well, it's kind of like the parent who gives their kid a bunch of cigarettes. Oh, you got caught smoking. Now you got to smoke this whole pack until you make yourself sick, yada,
Yeah.
yada, yada.
And they do. And they're like, I never want to do that
I
again.
never want to do that again. I mean, there's something to that. There's
Well, that should have worked for me when I was young, and I saw my mother drinking a Heineken out of a beer bottle, and so at a very young age, I remember drinking this Heineken out of a bottle, and I spat it out because it was so freaking disgusting. You'd think I'd learn, but apparently not.
Well, I always thought alcohol was disgusting tasting
Yeah,
in the beginning, and then it was like
yep,
definitely acquired taste. But I didn't care because I was chasing the feeling, not the
yeah,
not the
right,
taste. Yeah, so I,
exactly. It
I
was
didn't really care.
for me. It was just like it didn't come to me as this addictive desire that I had to have later down the road. But you'd think one would slap the other, but obviously it's, to your point, it's the coping mechanism, the cultural mechanism, and also the experience that we grow up with as children, that whatever the behavior, it's a learned behavior from our parents. That's why there's so many alcoholic children of parents
My
who
mom didn't drink at all though, like not
oh,
at
interesting.
all.
Wow.
and my dad really wasn't around, but I think that's why I said there's a genetic part, and they're saying now like it's in our DNA too from generations.
Yes,
So my
absolutely. Yeah.
grandpa, who I
Sure.
never met, still had some sort of, you know, effect on
Yeah.
me, and plus the personality. Like my mom was very neurotic person, full Italian, and I think like in her life and what we were taught, she raised us was, worrying means you care. Like that's, and then
Mm.
so I've had to like deconstruct all that thinking, like and heal from that, because that's kind of what made me neurotic and me, like because I felt like, well, yeah, worrying means you care, so it's a good thing to worry, and it's a way you can control you can control, but
Mm.
you don't control. Like worrying to me these days, I've realized it's negative prayer. We're
Yeah.
actually
Yeah,
attracting
totally.
exactly. So I look at it completely differently, but I think a lot of why I self-medicated is because of all that anxiety
Yep.
that just was passed down from my mom. Even though she wasn't a drinker, she definitely had that anxious personality and worried
Okay.
and stressed out all the time.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's kind of the other point. I mean, definitely there is the learned behavior, the learned coping mechanism, but there's also that large component of the DNA. Are you predisposed? Doesn't mean
Hmm.
it's gonna be
The
automatic,
addict brain.
but it means you're predisposed to more likely than not
How do you handle
go that
dopamine?
direction.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's like, for example, like the stereotype of like the Irish person who loves alcohol. It's become a stereotype. Why? Because perhaps there's something in the DNA that predisposes them to
Hmm.
go that direction to help them. There's something genetic somehow somewhere that they're more likely than not. So it's more, you know.
I also think I was meant to go through everything I went through. Like it was like soul contracting, because like now
Yes.
that I've been through everything, and
Hmm.
it started like at 18, I had this spiritually transformative experience where I was just reading a book. I wasn't drinking. I was reading a book on near death experiences, because I've been a spiritual seeker my whole life. I always knew, because I had experiences. So I'm like, I want to, and I was a little bit afraid of death. So I wanted to, that's why I was reading these books, near death experiences, because
Mm.
I wanted to be comforted. And so I'm reading these books, and it triggered this 2 week long experience of like oneness and bliss. And what I call it now is, I think I was like living in fifth dimension, because it was kind of felt like I was having a near death experience, except I was here in my body, in my avatar, right? And I didn't know what was going on at the time, because it was like 1992 or something, when I was 18. And I was like, telling my friends, and I looked crazy, right? And they were like, "What are you talking about?" But what I think happened is that I was basically, it was like a quantum experience, where I remembered, like as I'm reading this book, it triggered my, like, how we come into each incarnation with amnesia, where we,
Spiritual amnesia.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I think it took me out of the amnesia, and I'm like, oh yes, I remember, this is how it really is. That
Wow.
whatever book that I was reading, I think it was Saved by the Light, but I'm reading this book, and it just triggered these memories, my soul memories, and brought me out of the 3D reality. And there was no internet back then, so I didn't have any guidance. I went to a library, went to a bookstore, very few things that you could find. But I did find something, in some cultures called it nirvana, enlightenment, but I don't even know that it was enlightenment. I think my soul remembered, and I was able to see how everything was connected. I would get downloads. I would think a question, get the answers. Like it could be something complicated like quantum
Wow.
physics.
Yeah.
Did not get to keep all of this knowledge. I like to think it's in my subconscious somewhere, but I remember understanding every, like, oh my gosh, and like talking to people, and them wanting to commit me to a psych ward, because it sounds crazy to people who aren't altered, in that altered state, right? And I
Right.
wasn't, like I said, it was drug free. So it was just from reading a book. So we can have these experiences without plant medicine. I just want people to know that,
Absolutely.
without, and it was like I said, just this knowledge. And it just, I think Abraham Hicks called it, when, because I am very much into Abraham Hicks, and I could, search it on YouTube, and typed it in, and she said, she called it seeing the world through the eyes of source. And it was just, it went from all this oneness and connection and love and bliss for 2 weeks, and then the world brought me down, got back to 3D reality. It was this huge contrast, and I went from
Mm.
being so connected to everything to so disconnected, and it
Mm.
led to depression. And I don't know if you heard this before, but about enlightenment. Before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. Same, right? But now I'm here. I didn't have any guidance. I didn't have the internet. So I got depressed. And then my 18-year-old brain was like, Well, the only way I can kind of feel connected to anyone is by drinking
Mm.
alcohol. So
Ah,
like then I started drinking more, but it all led to this whole thing. I think I needed to experience addiction. I wouldn't change a thing because I know I'm intelligent and I know that addiction has nothing to do with intelligence. And it was so weird when I was trying to quit and how hard it was. And I'm like, I'm a logical, practical, smart. Yeah, I'm woo woo, but I'm also logical and smart and practical person. Like,
yep.
and it was so weird to have that, like, why is this so hard? And to realize
Yeah.
it's such a different animal than people realize. Addiction's a tricky.
Yeah, that's and I think it's so interesting that you're able to connect that to a soul contract, to an experience that you come here to learn, because we all come down to learn our specific experiences and lessons that we're seeking
Mhm.
as we're between lives, and we're in our soul being. We go through those contracts saying, okay, well, I want to learn X, Y, and Z, and I want to have these ABC
And
experiences,
we pick our parents, we
and
pick
we
our
pick our
family,
we
and that we
yeah,
pick those alcoholics.
and then exactly, so we're like, okay, so the best way so imagine yourself up there in your soul being, hanging out with your soul band of comrades who are going to help you and take their roles as your whomever it is they're going to be with you. Then you come down into this life, into this theater, I call it, as your traveling band of actors. You experience all these things. You're like, okay, well, in order to have these lessons, I'm going to have these experiences, and yada yada. And you had that suddenly, that sudden awareness where you're like, wow, now I know what it's like relative to what I have to have all these things. But oh, what a bummer! I've got to go through the life to actually
Yep,
experience it.
yep.
Still got to carry that water and chop that
And
wood.
I think I had to embody that whole thing, and because I was supposed to be teaching it later in life, and maybe I drew it, because maybe I dragged it out, the addiction, longer than I needed to. I might have, but I also think I couldn't have been a life coach until my 40s
Right.
because I
Yeah.
didn't have enough life experience. So I think it worked out
Absolutely.
perfectly. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think I needed to embody that whole 2 week experience of bliss in the fifth dimension, or whatever that was, the oneness bliss experience, because it was showing me that this is the truth, and the stuff that you learned in Catholic church was not the truth, and the fear-based stuff, and fear is only an illusion, and all
Hmm.
those things. I had to actually embody it, or else I wouldn't have enough confidence to teach it later in life.
Right. Well, it's like the you can't teach it unless you've already got the experience. You can't
It's just not from reading it from a book.
No, you can't be the doctor to truly heal somebody unless you've already gone through the healing process of that thing yourself. You've already gone through it. Well, you
Yep.
can't be the defense attorney before you've been the prosecuting attorney, because you've got to know what it's like to be on the other side of that to bring you through. So that's
Hmm.
all we're doing is, in order for us to learn these things, we actually have to experience it. It's like the example I use every day. It's like, you can tell your 5-year-old to not touch that hot stove, 100 times, and are they going to listen? Never. It's only when they touch that hot stove and have that incredibly painful experience, they will never touch it again.
And that's so true. And some of my clients will sign up for something to do with their career. Like, oh, I'm lost. I don't know what I'm doing. Like they're looking for their life path in a different kind of way. And they'll end up quitting drinking just because, like, I'm their coach, and it's like like I'm an example. People learn by example more than by you telling them to do something. Like, just me being a role model to them, they quit on their own without us even talking about alcohol. So I think
Yeah.
that's so interesting because people don't want to be told what to do. So
Right.
just being an example to people, I think, is like, if someone's listening and they're sober curious, like, hopefully we were good examples, and you do stuff on your own, and figure it out. Maybe we just planted a seed for some sober curious people. See
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
happens.
Hopefully so.
Hopefully.
Well, this is great. What if you were to give a listener, one piece of advice as they leave? What would you say to them?
Gosh, it's just never too late to change, and don't wait until you hit rock bottom. You don't need a catalyst. Just it's just enough to just want to improve your life and feel good, just to live your best life, and vibe high, as high as possible every day, and not self-sabotage. So if you have goals, just take action. Take action. What are you waiting for? That's why it's called day one life coaching. My practice is because it's like day one. or one day. Or what, you going to wait for one day? Because or make today your day one. Just get started because the time goes by anyway.
Yeah,
You
what was
might
that?
as well
What was that TV show? One Day at a Time.
one day at a time. Oh yeah,
That's what life is about. You got to
old
live your
school.
day one day at a life, or whatever it is.
Exactly. And yeah, just it's never too late. I don't care how old you are, and just always there's help out there. Like, and it's not even shameful. Like, so when what people who tell me that they aren't like, I'll get clients like, oh, I don't have addictions. I'm like, okay. Well, I've learned, like, the people who say that have the most addictions, by the way.
They're trying to
And
hide it.
addictions are so many more things that, like we talked about earlier, but there's a root cause. Anytime there's a problem, I've learned that the root cause is some sort of addiction. That's why I'm like, I'm an addiction recovery coach, because if you're in a bad marriage, there's a problem with the, like, that's going on with addiction, because you're having some sort of like patterns that you're stuck in. That's addiction. Like, you're stuck in
Yeah,
these patterns with your spouse, that you need to break out of, and you in these trauma bonds. So many people are in trauma bonds and don't even know it. So I
right.
a lot of my clients are just simply trying to get out of toxic relationship patterns, and
Yeah.
that's kind of, honestly, I get more of those people lately than I do with the alcohol.
Wow. Interesting.
It's an addiction.
Yep.
People get
Well,
addicted to drama, and then they feel weird in a normal relationship because they're used to that roller coaster ride. I used to
yeah.
be that person, by the way. So
Oh, there you go. You see, again, you're talking from experience. It's all about the experience. You
exactly.
can't teach something unless you've had the experience. Well,
Exactly.
well, great. Well, this has been absolutely wonderful. So, Mary Beth, thank you so much for being on the show. This could have gone on for days.
I know, right? We could keep talking for hours.
This is wonderful. Well, again, thank you so much. How can people get in contact with you or know more about you?
The best way is my website, day1lifecoaching.com, and it's DAYONE lifecoaching.com. Someone else has the number one, so spell it out. And I offer a free discovery call. So that what that is like, let's say you're listening and you're like, hey, some stuff she's saying is resonating with me, or maybe I could use a life coach. I offer a free discovery call, and where we could chat, and you tell me a little bit about your background, and I tell you a little bit about how I work, and we decide, are we a match? If we're not a match, maybe I can guide you somewhere else to someone who's a better match for you. And so that's just free. We just like a, 15 to 30-minute call. And so that's the best thing, because one-on-one coaching is so valuable. Like, it's taking quantum leaps to your goals instead of baby steps, in my
Right.
opinion. I hired a coach, and that's what made me want to become one, because I was like, wow, that was so helpful.
That's great.
And I do want to offer to your listeners, with a coupon code. Want to use coupon code spirits. Spirits is a good one probably for your show.
Spirits. Yeah.
Spirits. So which is ironic, it also means alcohol. Spirits.
You're right.
I just thought of that.
Yeah, yes, exactly.
Okay, but not those kind of spirits. Okay, so these are cards that were a download to me, and I created them in 2020. Addiction recovery with the law of attraction. It's all the techniques that I use to quit drinking, everything that raised my vibration, and these addictions do fall away. So whether it's food addiction, alcohol, toxic relationships, these are the and you pick a card every day, and they each teach law of attraction, as well as different techniques. It gives you something to focus on each day. A positive, they're all positive cards, and there's a deck of 44 cards. So I will give $10 off of my cards to your listeners using the coupon code SPIRITS on my website, day1lifecoaching.com. I'm on every single platform: TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, Mary Beth Schrudder, or Day One Life Coaching on some platforms, depending on which one. And if you're on Instagram, I'm the one that's verified with the blue check mark. There's somebody else who's got my name, but not verified. So yeah, follow me. I give tips and little, like, manifestation tips on a regular basis, and inspiration, motivation, things like that.
Well, there you go. Well, awesome. Well, thank you so much. And this has been fabulous. So it definitely sounds like there's a lot that you can offer people. So again, thank you for coming on the show.
Thanks again for having me. It's been fun.
Yep, absolutely. Well, thank you everybody for listening. Hope you got something out of this today, something maybe take away with you, maybe something resonated. This is always great to get little tidbits out there. So again, thank you for listening. And if this is something that you want to keep on following, just definitely like and subscribe. That way, you'll always see the next episode that comes into your feed. Automatically comes in every Wednesday. So with that, I thank you so much for listening. This is Chris signing off, sending you love and light, and I will see you next time. Bye for now. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Spirits Beside Us. Make sure you head over to the show notes for all the links and information on this week's episode. You can check it out at spiritsbesideus.com. If you love this episode as much as I did, head over to rate and subscribe so you never miss an episode. Also, if you're looking for a community of spiritual seekers like yourself, make sure you join my Facebook page, Spirits Beside Us Podcast on Facebook. This is Chris signing off, sending you love and light. I can't wait to connect with you again on Wednesday.